Do you hear my, do you?
What's up, everybody? My name is Jess Weber. This is Spiritual Warfare, and today's guest is Dr. Chase Spears. Served in the U.S. military for 20 freaking years. Holy cow. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Jess, great to be with you, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I am excited because I need some insight. And the first question a lot of our audience would probably want to ask you is, are the aliens there? Where are the aliens? Did you see any? Come on.
I never saw any aliens. That was not my forte. I had the same questions. I'm wondering the same thing. Funny enough, I saw the tweet the president put out about it. I sent it to a buddy of mine who's convinced there's something there, but I have no idea. Well, I was out at Las Vegas a few years ago. My wife and I rode on the big Ferris wheel out there, the high roller, which is the tallest Ferris wheel in the world currently. And at the very top, on a clear day, you can actually see out towards area 51. And so while we were up there top of the Ferris wheel, I'm looking out that way and I'm like, I wonder, but I wonder with everyone else.
Really? All right. So explain what your job was for 20 years in the U.S. military. What exactly did you do?
Yeah, for 20 years, I was a U.S. Army public affairs officer. So anything that deals with communication to the public, anything that deals with media coordination, the folks who set up for troops to come to do parades, that's the kind of stuff that public affairs officers do. So I did that my entire career. I actually had studied journalism at a few different places and intended to be in news production. I ended up doing what I intended to be 1 4-year tour in the Army doing public affairs because that works very closely with the press. And I thought that'd be a great way to learn and connect and build my skills and move on into the civilian world of doing it. God laughed at my ideas of a 4-year plan, as he usually does. And I did 20 years as a communication strategist, spokesman, and trainer, and got to do a couple of executive leadership positions as well. So a lot of good years, a lot of hard years, towards the end, a lot of frustrating years. But man, I tell you what, 20 years sounds like such a big amount of time. It went by so quickly. I look back and I sometimes can't believe it's real that I really did that long.
It's got to be night and day from the Bush administration from now, or Trump administration. I would have to say 2023, right? You said 03 to 2023. You went
03 to 2023. Yeah. So I was under what? Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden. Yeah. Whew.
Big night.
Night and day, man.
Okay.
Night and day. I did not recognize the institution I left in comparison to the one that I entered.
But before we get into that, I want to know exactly, like, were you the guy that's got the information of what's going on in the military, and then you would go out to the press and say, this is what's going on, folks. This is how we're going into war, and don't worry, it's legitimate. There's bombs in Iraq. And like, were you that guy? Is that the communication that you were doing?
Something like that. The wars were already started when I showed up, so I didn't have to deal with that part of it. But yeah, that's really what we are. Public affairs officers are meant to be bridges between the military and the public. So we have this saying in the military: maximum disclosure, minimum delay. And it's not just a saying; it's actually now War Department policy that was signed into effect by Don Rumsfeld, way back in the day. And the idea is that we are supposed to help the military and the public to, not be as bisected from each other, as divided from each other. Now, in practice, that's often not the case. And in practice, more often than not, sadly, public affairs is meant to kind of just be a spokesman for the organization and to make commanders look good. But by theory and by policy, we are there to almost kind of be an accountability mechanism for the public from the military. And that's what I strove as much as I could to be.
Did you ever have to give disinformation to the media just so you're covering something else up? Did you ever have to do that?
I will not deny that there is a pressure on every PAO to do that. And, to the best Scouts honor here, I never knowingly put out disinformation. I never knowingly did misinformation. I believed wholeheartedly in the ethical, moral role of public affairs to be honest. Now, I witnessed exactly what you're talking about. I saw it. I had some very candid conversations with people about it. I've written about it. There were many, many times I could not be as open as I wanted to be because certain levels of information were unnecessarily classified, but they were classified nonetheless. So there were times I'll admit I was not able to share as much as I felt I should have been able to share. But I held myself to a standard of I'm not going to knowingly lie. I'm just not going to do it. I have to look myself in the mirror as a man, as a Christian.
Yeah, but sometimes you kind of have to give disinformation so the enemy is listening to the media and say, "Oh, well, they're gonna bomb us at 7:00," but really you're bombing them at 4. I mean, isn't that some kind of thing that you have to do too?
Well,
Maybe
so now you're getting, yeah. So now you're getting into the role of military deception, which is absolutely a righteous and noble and ethical thing to do in warfare. And there are other mechanisms for doing that. I mean, so the military has many communication capabilities. You have psychological operations, you have information operations, which is kind of a coalesce or of information from all levels of the military to achieve some of those effects. Public affairs is very deliberately supposed to be segmented away from all of those things. So, for instance, now I never had this, but we're speaking in terms of how doctrine and theory would work. For instance, if there was going to be an attack, and I'm there with Geraldo Rivera, I'm going to say, hey man, like do me a favor, do me a solid, and don't draw the map in the sand, right? What we might do in that case is say, hey, look, we're not going to announce the fact that the unit is here. That's obvious, right? But that's different than deliberately lying. And so public affairs is supposed to be segmented from the deception operations, but that also it doesn't mean that you're not careful about when you communicate to try to protect operational security.
Okay. All right. So, all right. What about you were in there during the Bush years, right?
I was.
Not 9/11 though. You weren't there during 9/11. That's correct.
No,
right?
no, I was in college during 9/11.
Did you what did you think about 9/11? Did you did you think anything was funny about that, or I don't know, did you think that was a real attack against us?
I do. Okay. And I'll tell you, it struck me. I'll just never forget the day. It was such a beautiful day. I remember walking into work that morning and looking up and thinking, my goodness, I went to school in Southeast Tennessee. So it was just like this crisp fall morning. It was just gorgeous. And I remember thinking what a great day it was going to be. And when I walked out of that building, it was like the world had changed. And I know there are a lot of different theories about it. I think you have to be careful about that. We watched planes flying to towers. I think that happened.
Okay. What about hitting the Pentagon though? I mean, you think that was a plane, or do you think that was a missile?
Yeah. All the evidence points to an aircraft.
Really? Interesting. Yeah. I saw footage. It looked like a missile to me. I don't know how can a plane get that low to the ground and slide right through? Like, can it get that low? I mean, I would think it would come down, but the video we saw was like straight across. It was really, you see that?
Yeah.
Video?
I mean, yeah, I'm familiar with the video that you're talking about. I mean, and I've watched a lot of forensic analysis about that and the way that certain light poles were hit on the approach path in and the number of witnesses. I've talked to people who are in DC who heard it, who saw it. So, I mean, I've never had any doubt that was an aircraft that hit the Pentagon. I mean, they pulled out aircraft wreckage. I've actually worked in that portion of the Pentagon that's since been rebuilt and looked out that window and tried to imagine what it had to be like watching the view that day.
So did that push you to go into the military because of 9/11? Is that one thing was that a thing? Is that why you went in or no?
So I wouldn't say it pushed me necessarily, but it certainly laid the groundwork that passively kind of led me in that direction. I was in graduate school when I finally decided to join the Army. I'd graduated from Lee University with an undergraduate in journalism, and then went on to University of Tennessee for graduate work in journalism. And the Army at that point in time, 2003, we were full tilt in Iraq, we were full tilt in Afghanistan. The Army needed people. That was a time that the force was building. I ran into an Army recruiter while I was at a courthouse. I was working part-time at a law firm while going to graduate school. And, he assessed very quickly someone who would fit into the Army really well and was pretty aggressive about staying in touch with me for the next several months. And so obviously now I admit I'm not one of those guys who saw 9/11 and said, I have to rush down to a recruiter's office, because I never felt called to the military way of life. I supported the military. I loved the troops. I just didn't think it was for me. But while I was in grad school, it was just one of those opportunities that presented itself, and it kept presenting itself. And my wife and I prayed about it. And in time, we felt like this is probably the right thing to do. We feel like this is probably where the Lord is leading. And so 9/11 didn't directly make me run to it, but it was the conditions of warfare after 9/11 that certainly made the Army need people, and kind of I got swept into it that way.
Right. I mean, what did you think about Building 7 just falling down like that? I mean, just a complete demo down.
Yeah, lots of different theories about that going on. I mean, I the analysis that I've watched on that, I think it was legit, but I realize there are a lot of people that disagree on that.
All right. I mean, hey, listen, you're communicating pretty well with it. If you're covering up everything. You're good. I like it. I like how you're still in the force still. It seems like you're still working for them. All right. So after Bush years, you were I know your thing is about the people, the military people in the army, how it was. Give me the patriotism or how the troops were in the army, because obviously it changes all the way to the Biden years, and tell me the gradual change.
Well, I mean, there's always a certain level of patriotism in the force, and that's a great thing. That's something that's characteristic of the kind of people who want to join the military. Is that these are overwhelmingly good people who see a need, see a mission, see something bigger than themselves, and want to be a part of it. Now, that said, the military is a cross section of society, and so you have all sorts of people, all sorts of perspectives, all sorts of worldviews that do come into it. And so you see people on the right, you see people on the left, you see people in the center. I worked with some great people throughout who were very patriotic. But my concern as the years went on, as the military began more of a leftward movement, was that you had people who were on the left who felt more emboldened to be open about their ideology. And they felt more comfortable being aggressive about it and actually getting into open activism within the force. And after Obama came into office, he really pushed the whole sexual revolution into the military. And that was really kind of a sea change moment for the military, because then it was really kind of like the dam opened, and a lot of people who previously would not have wanted to be in saw, oh, now the dam has been broken open, and conservatives who want to conserve the military are being shoved away and pushed into corners and pushed into silence. So we can come in, and this is something that we can take full advantage of the institutional benefits of. So I did see a further leftening of the force over the years, but to this day, I really do in my heart believe that most people who serve really do love the nation, really are patriotic, but there are problematic individuals as well, particularly at the higher leadership levels.
I just don't understand how someone goes into the army and has this mental issue that wants to transition in the army. Like, where's their I don't see how someone that's trans has a passion to be in the army. How did you see that? Or
no, I mean, no, people, it was openly known. It was openly known when, during the Biden administration, when the whole transgender movement was shoved down our throats, and the brass jumped on board with it because they were told to do it. And we're to a point now where most of the brass doesn't have a conscience, that all the people who had a conscience were cleaned out under the last few years. But it was openly known, openly discussed, that we know there are a lot of people coming in who have gender dysphoria, and they see the military as a way to cover their surgical costs. That was openly known. Those people are not people who had a passion to serve the nation. Quite the contrary. They had a passion for themselves, because when you come in and you undergo those treatments, you are non-deployable and you're nothing but a financial burden on the unit. And so, no, I mean, those people were not here for the nation. They were there for themselves.
Don't they get screened though? Because my buddy's going into the army right now, and I was one of his references, and they're pretty intense right now. But didn't they screen these people? Like, hey, are you? I don't know. Did they not ask if they were transitioning or gay or anything like that?
I mean, during which years are you asking? Because it shifted.
I mean, once you saw an increase of trans, let's just say, once you saw, like, then, whatever years those were. Was that Obama years probably?
That was Biden years.
So it was an increase during the Biden.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it took until the Biden years for that to be openly allowed and openly accepted. So Obama started it, but he was very quickly out of office by the time it finally matriculated down to the force. Trump immediately stopped it. And then when Biden came in, that was one of his first acts, was to lift the ban and to really push this on the military. And from then on, once Biden opened the door, it wasn't a disqualifier anymore. If anything, I would say it was a leg up, because, well, now you have someone who's coming in and it's helping the diversity of the force. And that was the whole purpose of that shift of policy. That shouldn't have in policy to bring transgenderism in the military. Had nothing to do with fighting readiness. It had nothing to do with building a force. It had nothing to do with the esprit de corps. It had everything to do with reshaping the cultural mores of the force. And so, yeah, during the Biden years, it was encouraged. If you were of that mindset, of that belief, anywhere on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, you were encouraged to come in. So it wasn't something they were screening out. If anything, they were looking for it.
Yeah, but don't you think that's dangerous to have someone on all this medication and they got to go and be fighting ready, but they have this surgery and then they're not ready. And then they're taking all this medication to, I don't know, the hormones and whatever. And don't you think that's a liability?
100%. It was a liability. It is a liability. I mean, golly, look around. I mean, at the shootings that have happened. I mean, I hate to reduce things to a meme, but I saw a meme yesterday, and it perfectly encapsulates the moments that here's a hard truth. More people have been shot by people with gender dysphoria this year than have been shot by ICE agents. I mean, it's really becoming an epidemic. Was it dangerous? You're darn right it was dangerous. We all knew it too, but it was one of those things that you were told if you had a problem with this, you were the problem, not the person who was coming in wanting to be pumped full of medications, not the person coming in wanting their body to be chopped apart. You who saw that which was not normal and said, this is not normal, you were made to be the problem. And it was either shut up or get out. Those were pretty much your two options.
So who's pushing that in the military? Is it just, you just got these generals that are they're woke too? I mean, who's telling them to be woke or push that agenda? And then who's making these criteria or these, I don't know, these lessons for the rest of the army to learn?
Yeah, it all started at the top during the Biden years. I mean, the president is the commander in chief, and he directed this. And of course, that goes down through the chain of command, through the combatant commanders and the service chiefs of staff, through the Secretary of Defense and the secretaries of the service. And so you have to keep in mind, every senior general officer is a White House appointment. Every senior civilian in the military, the service secretaries, the secretaries of war, the undersecretaries of war, the deputy undersecretaries of war, these are all political appointees, and they are brought in based on their willingness to enforce the policy of the president and their willingness to hold to the party discipline of the president and to carry out the president's vision within that agency. And so every one of those people got party discipline extraordinarily well. That's one thing the left wing is very, very good at, is party discipline. And so it started at the top. Well, then it had to get down through the generals and the colonels and the sergeants major. And again, by that point in time, by the Biden administration, you'd had 8 years of the Obama administration that had really kind of culled those at the high levels who had a moral conscience. So at the highest levels, you had really kind of two classes of senior generals left. You had those who either were enthusiastic card-carrying members of the revolution, or you had those who were not, who knew this wasn't a good thing, but they were too cowardly to speak up and say anything about it because they didn't want to be forced out. And even if they retired, they didn't want to lose their social status that comes with you in retirement if you're still a good soldier and you don't speak up. And so to their great shame, there were a lot of people, senior leaders in the force who saw this was wrong, but they were cowards about it. And a lot of them are still cowards about it.
What's the origin story of the trans general in the Biden administration? What's that origin story? How did that thing become a general and be in charge? And did you know her or him, whatever, in the past 20 years?
I'm not familiar with a trans. Oh, are you talking about Levine?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, so I mean that yeah, Mr. Oh shoot, Ralph Levine likes to go by Rachel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, that
he must.
fruitcake.
Yeah,
So that, yeah, Ralph Levine, he was not, so the job that he was in is one that is ceremonially a military position, but it's not really a military position. So that he was appointed into that role for one reason, and one reason only, and that was so that Biden could put a so-called transgender person into a military uniform. But I mean, that person was completely outside the chain of command, had no military supervision authorities. That's really a ceremonial thing only, that the person who holds that position wears a military uniform. And that was just done for the optics of it. Now, the one of the higher ranking people that was in the military, who went down that road, was a man who renamed himself, or at least goes by the name now, Bree Fram. And he was an Air Force colonel, transitioned over to being a Space Force colonel. You can look this person up. He's actually running for Congress now in Northern Virginia. Go figure. And he was very, very, very much an activist in this regard. Did a lot of media on it, walking around dressed like a woman, and was obviously given a lot of preferential treatment for carrying that identity around. And so I was very glad to see that he is no longer in uniform. But yeah, Admiral Levine, that was just really kind of a spit in the face to the force to put that man in military uniform. But fortunately, it was ceremony only.
So she never served in the military, or did she? Or
No,
at all. It was, how do you get appointed to that? I mean,
well, it was a presidential appointment. That's a job that you do not have to have spent a day in the military to get. I don't know the mechanics of it. If I realized you were going to ask about that, I would have looked it up real quick before we came on. But that's a role. It's a senior health official role, and for whatever reason, whoever goes in it is like ceremonially in the military and wears a military uniform, but they're not actually a member of the Department of War in any fashion.
That's right. She was the Secretary of Health, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah,
okay.
He was. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Unbelievable. All right. So during the Obama years, it wasn't really pushed. The trans agenda was not pushed. It was just the gay agenda was pushed, right?
Well, he started with the gay agenda and promised immediately, I tell you this, Americans, we will not go down the transgender road in the military. And of course we knew he was lying. And he pushed that. It was during the Obama administration that the rules were first changed to open the force to transgenderism. It took a little bit of time for the military to get spun up to that and get the regulations changed and the accession standards changed and to redo all the rules to allow this madness in. They had just begun, just got past the cusp of it and just begun when Trump became president. He immediately slammed the brakes on that train and stopped it. So Obama began the push. He just didn't get to live it out. But then Biden came in and, when he pulled the brakes off, the military was ready to go because it had got itself ready to go during the Biden years.
Okay. So let me ask this. Do you think gay guys are ready? Can they perform as a, good soldier, or do they have problems?
Well, that's really two or three different questions. Can someone who is homosexual perform military tasks and duties? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you haven't gone and actually butchered yourself and you're still healthy and you can carry a rifle and you can run and you can rock, can you perform military duties? Yeah, you can. Here's where historically the issue was, and I share these concerns. The issue comes down to morality. It comes down to morality, and it comes down to esprit de corps. The morality issue, and this is something that George Washington recognized, and this was the tradition for centuries of military service in American history, was when you put someone under arms on behalf of nation to carry out what Clausewitz called policy by other means, which is warfare, you want that person to have a certain level of ethical and moral acuity.
Right.
And when you are someone who denies the most basic model of nature that God has created, that calls into question your decision making and your ethics in a whole other variety of areas. Now, I mean, I've served with soldiers who are openly homosexual. I've got along with them. I've known many of them who did good work, but I still believe the military should be an honor-bound, culture. The second issue is esprit de corps, and this was something that was completely washed over and glossed over when this was forced upon us. Was that if I, as a Christian heterosexual man, and my family, we have our beliefs on what sexuality should be, but if once they open the floodgates, if we speak those beliefs out loud and someone who is of the homosexual persuasion hears us and is offended, well, now we're in trouble. Now it's not, well, they're allowed their opinion, diversity of thought. No, our diversity of thoughts, it stops where their level of comfort is. And so there's the esprit de corps issue, and it interferes with the ability of people to trust one another. And when you're in the force and you have to worry that, oh, something I say might offend someone, so I had to be careful. Well, now your trust in that person is down. And that's where the beginnings of kind of decay and camaraderie, the esprit de corps and the tightness of the unit come into play. And so you can't have that. The military is too dangerous a business to play these social games with.
Yeah. What about, would you rather have a Christian army, a Christian USA army, or, I mean, because you also got Muslims in there, and we see some issues with, some certain Muslims, some are radicalized, and they're in the in the army. So how do you know they're not radicalized and not trying to get intel? And how do you know they're not planning something down the line? Or do you guys vet them pretty well?
Well, I mean, theoretically, everyone is supposed to be vetted. And I mean, in Chase's perfect world, everyone would be a Christian, right? I wish that were the case. Now, that's not the case, right? We live in a fallen world. We know that, Scripture tells us the road to destruction is wide and the road to heaven is narrow. So we know that. We know there's never going to be such a thing as a Christian army. I certainly want the military to embrace Christian tradition and conservative tradition, because that's what the nation is founded upon, and that's what we're supposed to defend. I've known some really great soldiers who are not of Christian faith who I've served with proudly, but I've also known people of even Christian faith who are not necessarily great soldiers. And so it really does. In my perfect world, would we all be Christians? Yes, but it's not my perfect world. But we have to make sure that we have the right people in it. And I've got a personal story on that. When I was a platoon leader a long time ago, I had a Muslim soldier, and this guy was not a good guy. This guy was very sympathetic to extreme ways of thinking, and he was very open about that. He was just a problem after problem after problem after problem. But because he had that status that we ascribe to people called minority status, he was protected. And it got to a point where he was even making open threats against me and the commander, and he was allowed to continue doing that. And eventually he was chaptered out of the army, but he was just such a problematic person. And so, are there people like him in? Yeah, there are. And I would, just like there were people like Nidal Hassan in, right? So it really does come down to the individual. There are great people of all walks of life and all beliefs in the military, and there's some who are not so great.
Wow. Okay. All right. So pretty much you're saying that when Biden was in office, and we know he wasn't really in charge, it was basically his staff, and they just went wild, and they just incorporated all these trans, and these people was it just basically because they wanted free surgery? Is that what it was, like the main focus of these trans people joining the army was free surgery?
I think that was one of the big motivators. I mean, that was openly talked about, that we know that there are people joining right now specifically so they can get these medical procedures on the taxpayer dime. That was anyone who disagreed with that, you just couldn't take them seriously.
They're doing it today during the Trump administration?
No. Thankfully, the Trump administration has put an end to that. So you can no longer be openly transgender in the military and serve. And the Department of War and also the Department of Veterans Affairs have ceased offering those kind of services. Thank God.
Okay. DEI. Was that a huge, I mean, that's a huge problem. I mean, how could you, I don't know, did you guys lower the standard? Like you can now shoot 10 feet instead of 1,000 feet? I mean, is that like what they were doing? And then he's your partner? I mean, this sounds like a nightmare that you got these crazy people next to you that are not qualified. Is that how it was?
Yeah, DEI was certainly a problem, and to a certain extent, DEI remains a problem. And so, for instances where you saw DEI creeping in that affected readiness were like the forced integration of women into combat arms units. And bottom line is, basic biology is what it is. Bone structure is what it is. Real science does not care about your feelings. You know, a women's skeletal structures will only handle so much weight in comparison to men's skeletal structures. And so there were studies done leading up to the integration of women into combat arms units that demonstrated that it literally breaks their bodies, that this is not a good thing. It does not enhance readiness. There were also studies that demonstrated that it took an emotional toll because men, we are naturally wired to want to protect women, and we would put ourselves in additional positions of risk on the battlefield in order to protect a woman rather than focusing on engaging the enemy, you know, which would be more focused on the enemy if we had a man to the right or the left in a frontline combat arms unit. And so that's where that really, really showed through. These studies were done and they were completely dismissed by the senior leadership of the Department of Defense then under Presidents Obama and President Biden. And we were told, you know, we don't care. You will make this happen. It's not a matter of if, it's not a matter of whether or not it's good for readiness. It's what the president wants. We don't care about its effect on the force. You will do this. So that was one area. Another area was physical fitness tests. We're all required in the military to be able to twice a year pass a physical fitness test. In the Army, it was the Army physical fitness test, and they've changed it a couple times since then. I don't even know what they call it now, but it's basically a PT test is what you call it. And the women's standard is easier, bottom line. But in combat, it doesn't matter whether you're a woman. If you can't run as fast and you can't carry as much, you're going to be a detriment to the fighting ability of your unit. So that was another area that we saw that creeping in. It mainly manifested itself in physical standards.
So if you spoke up, you are dishonorary discharge. Is that the thing?
No, I mean, it takes more than speaking up for them to kick you out. But if you spoke up about this stuff while you're in the ranks, you kind of marked yourself like, hey, this guy or gal, if they have concerns about this and they're open and honest about their concerns about this, they may not be a member of the team. And so people like me who just believe in basic truth, who believe in things that were military policy when we joined, that were military policy until very recently, that carried over from centuries of military tradition, it was just a switch flipped. And all of a sudden now what you believed, what 15 minutes ago was actual military policy. Well, now that's problematic and it's been left behind. And if you still believe those things, you are now the problem and you need to be watched suspiciously. And there were stories of chaplains being punished for preaching the truth. I had a supervisor who tried to begin the process to punish me for raising some concerns to him that I had about some of this stuff and just saying I'd like a conversation about it. And he said just by asking for the conversation, I'd violated policy, and he tried to punish me. He ultimately backed off of that. I think he probably talked to an attorney who told him how the law actually works. But there was very much a spiral of silence among just constitutionally minded people that if you have a problem with this, you better keep it to yourself if you know it's good for you.
Yeah, but this is dangerous though. I mean, it's not even like, facts. Yeah, a woman can't do this and a trans can't do. But this is dangerous. Like, this is beyond dangerous. There's no group of people are like, all right, that's it. We're taking back. Let's take the military back. This is a joke. Okay, we're gonna die if we keep implementing these DEI policies, and we're gonna die if I have transgender Joe over here with all the medication in the world and healing from a surgery. This is dangerous, and it also sounds like sabotaging the U.S. Army or even just the military in general. And it sounds like someone did that on purpose to destroy it, to make us weak.
I mean, isn't that the progressive ends of all institutions and all agencies that they can get their hands on? The watchword of the modern day Bolshevik is dismantle and deconstruct. Right. That's what they live for. That's what they exist for. To them, the military is an obstacle towards being able to achieve the overall ends they have. Every major communist revolutionary of the 20th century included taking over the military, because if you can gain control of the military, well, now you've taken away the best defense the people have against you committing wide mass bloodshed across the land. And so this is what really bothers me as someone who reads history is seeing we are watching the exact same play that happened in 1914 Russia, that's happened in 1953 China, it's happened in every other bloody communist revolution. They're trying to run the exact same play here, and too many Americans are falling for it, and we dare not, because history doesn't care about your feelings. We are not so enlightened that we wouldn't have the same end. This is why we have to be on our guard against this and pushing back. It's not enough to just say, woe is us, woe is us. We have to be doing something about it.
Yeah. And hopefully Trump is doing something about it. And it's almost like I kind of wish the military would have stepped in during the 2020 election. You know, like something like that to me was like, okay, it seemed like clear as day to us it was stolen. I think that was a really bad thing that happened in America. I mean, you might not believe it's stolen up, but I kind of like, I don't know. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like Biden got all the votes. Why didn't the military step in? Like, is it just because it would just create chaos and it would just look like our elections are not fair and free? I mean, what happened there? What did we lose there?
Yeah, golly, that's, you know, I'll tell you, I was very hesitant for the first year or so to say, all right, was it stolen? Well, there are a lot of irregularities. Well, did the man who never got out and campaigned really get the most votes of anyone in history? I had a lot of questions. Now, fast forward to now, yeah, I think there were enough irregularities to say that that the 2020 election was definitely at minimum underhanded, and I have significant trust issues with it, and do believe that he was probably not duly elected. Now, why did the military not step in? Well, at the end of the day, the military follows orders, and it wasn't ordered to. Now, it would have had President Trump then ordered it to. How would it have reacted? How would it have reacted? We'll never know.
So you're saying that Trump would have had to order that?
Yeah, I mean the military is commanded by the president, and President Trump was the president at the time of the election.
So he didn't want to order it. He didn't want to say he didn't want to.
I can't get in. I don't know what was going through his mind. That was not, it was not an option that he, for whatever reason, wanted to pursue. And I'm not sure that even if he wanted to, that would have been the right way to go on about it. You have to be really, really careful with that.
Yeah, but you got to think about this. They're telling us it's the end of the world if Democrats get back in. You know what I mean? They tell us it's going to be so bad. You know what I mean? We're going to be a third world nation. Like, they are threatening if they get back, they are destroying everything. We hear the Democrats destroying everything. We got fraud all across this country. It's time to, like, let's go here. If we're going to take this country back, let's go. What are we waiting for? Are we going to wait for Trump get out 2028? We'll see who wins. And if Democrat wins, they're going to bring it all, reverse all the policies. And we're going to get back into this system where we know that they're destroying the country. It's like, if we know they're actually destroying this country, why aren't we doing anything about it? Is it just, who cares? Are we just going to lose America?
Well, I care, and I'm not sitting back content to lose America. I mean, that's why I got out of the military when I did, and walked away from a promotion to lieutenant colonel that would have been very financially lucrative for me and my family. And I fight in the rhetorical and discursive space. I mean, that's where the true battle for America is right now. But I mean, it comes down to Americans have to care. Why in the world things are better now, but just go back a little over a year ago. We had the southern border wide open, and we had tens of thousands flying across the border every day. The numbers that I was looking,
that's a crime right there. Having the border, it's a crime. So why didn't Biden go to jail? Why didn't the military step up and say, that's it, he's going to jail? That's enough.
Well, and the military at that point in time, here's what bothered me. It was, I'll never forget, I had a friend whose unit, National Guard unit, was deploying to Poland. And so I went to the deployment ceremony. I wanted to support him and his unit. We're fellow soldiers, fellow brothers. And I was proud to be there with him. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't get over the fact that we're getting ready to send American service members to Europe while our own borders are being run over by tens of thousands of military age males every day. That's a problem. And so I'm glad to see the military being put to use to help secure the border. I mean, that's the purpose of the military to begin with. There are a lot of people now who complain about, oh, we shouldn't be using the military for American defense. What is it for? What is it for if not American defense? The Constitution does not give us a military for foreign adventurism. The Constitution does not give us a military to defend other nations. The motto of the U.S. Army is "This will defend," and this is the United States of America, the continental United States.
It's just mind blowing that they know, like the government knows there's 10,000 ISIS members in America and there's cells around America. They know because I don't know how they know, but they know. And they came during the Biden years. And I would think that would be a huge crime and no one's going to jail. So that doesn't make any sense. I would just hope there was some kind of core in the military that would just be like, all right, we are the real law here and we're going to step up and take care of things. But there isn't. It's just whoever's in charge controls military. Is that basically correct?
Well, I mean, that is how it works constitutionally. The president is the commander in chief of the military and Congress funds it. And so the president would have to give orders to get the military more involved in that. And there, obviously, I'm not right in on what all is going on in the White House, and there are multiple different law enforcement agencies that have different levels of responsibility in different sectors and on and so forth. So I realize it's complex, but I share your concern, and I also want to see a much more aggressive push to rid the nation of people who are sleeper cells and clear and present threats. Because, again, what is the purpose of government if not to protect the American people?
Right. All right. You talk about apolitical military. Can you describe that? What do you mean by that?
Well, I talk about it to say there is no such thing as an apolitical military. That this is an idea that came about in the shadow of the Second World War. A little bit of history lesson here. Up until the Second World War, we'd build a military for war, and then we'd pretty much disband the thing when the war was done, because we as Americans, our ancestors, did not want this permanent, large standing force, because they'd seen throughout history that large standing permanent armies quickly become a danger to liberty-minded peoples. And so the idea was we raise an army and then we lower it down. That's why to this day, the National Defense Authorization Act has to be passed every year by Congress to reauthorize a standing military, because of the way the Constitution is written. And so there's this, it's understood that the military is political, and so you want to keep it small and you want to keep it on a short chain. Then after World War II, we just come out of two major world wars in a 20-some year period, and Americans decide, fine, we'll keep a large standing military. Well, part of the deal for that was culturally, we would say this thing will be apolitical, so we don't have to worry about it taking one party side or the other. But there is no such thing as an apolitical military, because there's no such thing as an apolitical society. Politics deals with everything. I mean, even who does and doesn't have access to bandwidth for us to do the show tonight, politics plays a role in that. And so what is a more legitimate thing to strive for is a nonpartisan military, but at some level you're parsing words there. And so what I try to warn people about is there are a lot of people who don't want to talk about these topics, and they don't want to think about these topics because then they have to do something about it. And they say, I don't have to worry about it because the military is apolitical. No, the military is not apolitical. The military is a political agency. It commits policy. It conducts policy. It reacts to policy. It enacts policy at the end of a gun. And so it recognize what it is so that you can properly manage it.
Well, also, you guys vote. So if maybe you took out the voting for the military, that would solve your problem, right?
Oh, that would be far, far worse. I mean, George Washington himself said, we do not lay aside the citizen to assume the soldier.
Well, if you're going to be apolitical, no one should vote then. You know what I mean? Like if there's no politics in military, no one should vote, and they should just follow whatever the president says.
Man, that would be a dangerous place if you have people who are fighting for something that they don't get to benefit from. I
would think now it's dangerous because now you could be working side by side with a Democrat and he hates your politics and you hate his politics, because nowadays it's really bad. You know, if you're a Democrat and you're a Republican, you guys hate each other and it's over and you'll literally fight in the streets. But I can't imagine in the military, if one guy's a Democrat and he wishes Kamala was in office and now you're fighting next to him and he might just let that grenade go. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you don't know. Maybe that's another vetting that needs to be done. Military is, if they're a Democrat, get them out. That's what I would have to say. That's what I would do.
I mean, the military is a cross section of society. I've known conservatives, I've known progressives, I've known libertarians. Obviously, my perspective is I don't know how you can be a member of a party that hates the nation and fight for its and potentially die for its founding principles. I don't understand how that is. But I mean, when I first joined, even people who were on the left of center, let's say it, you know, we didn't talk about these things as much. We knew we were humans. We knew we had perspectives. We would have friendly debates. There's one guy who comes to mind right now. We'd have friendly debates and we go pretty intense. And at the end of it, we'd shake hands. Whereas now in the post-Obama Biden years, it got to where the left wing, the people who are really on the fringe, really on the extreme end of it, who made it through the military, they felt emboldened to be open about it, right? And that does create trust issues. I mean, I'll never forget one of my last jobs. Our unit commander had a BLM sign in his yard on base, mind you, on base. And do you think I felt comfortable going to him about any issues that might in my life? No.
Would you want him in your little hut with you two fighting? I mean, would you want him there with you?
I had some trust issues with him.
All right. Okay. During COVID, obviously you guys were forcing people to take the vaccine. Like, what was your job during that time during COVID? Because we're hearing that you guys were just forcing them, dragging them out of the room and shoving a shot through them. Or if they don't take the shot somehow, they are in the hole. Is that any of that true? And then what was your role during that time?
That is pretty much true. And my role was doing my darndest to stay alive, frankly. That was just that was frankly the worst period of my time in the military. And it was that year 2020 that broke me of wanting to continue being a soldier and wanting to continue being a public affairs officer, because it was such a mass betrayal of our military men and women to tell them that your honor is now tied to whether or not you want this experimental substance in your body that no one knows what the actual long-term effect is going to be. I'm not a medicinal scientist, but I was working on my PhD at the time. I'm pretty good at reading research. I know how studies work. I understand control groups, and to see this thing being rushed to market and being told by military commanders who have not a single day of medical training, assuring me safe and effective, because Anthony Fauci and Joe Biden said so. And to be told that if you don't embrace this, your honor is at stake. Your honor is at question. Your integrity to the oath is at question. That was a mass betrayal. And so what was my role? I was really blessed in that point in time. I was not in an active spokesman role. I was instead in a training role. I traveled around the Army and helped train my colleagues in public affairs on how to do tactical communication in a simulated battlefield environment. And so I had a lot of colleagues who were on the microphone during that time, and they were expected to speak the party line. And some of them shared with me, hey, this is really hard for me to do. And my response was, well, you shouldn't do it then. And they said, well, it's what I'm expected to do. And I'm like, yeah, well, there are a lot of things we're all expected to do that we know aren't wrong. And that's why we're given a conscience. And so I was fortunate. I wasn't on the mic. I would not have put out the party line. I know myself well enough to know I wouldn't have done that, because I committed to myself I will never knowingly lie as a public affairs officer. And so my job was just doing my best to hang in there and making a decision at that point in time. We were going to conclude our career, and I'm going to try to encourage as many of my colleagues as possible. Do not be a part of this lie, because it will haunt you the rest of your life if you are.
Oh, it wasn't Trump that mandated it, right? It was Trump put it out, obviously, and then Biden, was he the one mandating it?
Yeah, it was Joe Biden that mandated that the military make it a required part of the so-called vaccination series.
Don't they want you guys to be super soldiers? Like, I mean, I would think this would be like, all right, let's not wipe out our, let's not hurt our soldiers here. Like, were they just trusting the Fauci? Is that what it was? Like, oh, Fauci says good, so we're going to give it to everybody, and they're going to be strong for it. I mean, is that the mentality?
I think in the military today, there has been a grand loss in general. There are some pockets of exception,
Yeah.
but in general, you have a force that has lost the ability to think deeply and to think critically, and they just, and again, this goes to the reminder of, at the end of the day, militaries are political, and they received a political directive, and they marched forward with the political directive because the current class of generals want to keep their favor, right? Because this is all about their status. So, like, for instance, if you, let's say you have a general, 2 or 3 or 4-star general today, or during the Biden era, who knew this was wrong, who knew this was illegal, who knew this was immoral, and my response would be, well, cool, like resign and protest, and on the way out, say it out loud. This is a wrong thing, and I'm laying my rank on the table to say it, and I'm moving on. None of them would do it. None of them wanted to lose their status, because it's not only that you'd lay down your status in the force, there's also a status in retirement. Like, do you want to be the general who's still invited behind the closed door meetings and the galas, and who's brought on to the highly paid board of director slots? And that's all based on, did you stay in the club? Were you still a good general, even in retirement? So none of them, the crop that we have, none of them want to lose out on that status. And it's a shameful thing.
Wow. Yeah, there's so, I met a guy the other day. He's in the military, and he's like, he can't stand it because of the politics. And it's just, that's really sad. I just thought you guys would be like, want to be super soldiers. You guys taking testosterone in there and peptides? Did they do any of that in there?
No, yeah, it's not a part of the required series. I mean, they're probably some, I know there's some guys who take it over the counter, or have medical providers who work with them individually, but that's not part of the requirement. And so, I mean, yes, the military should want people to be in top physical condition. I mean, that's part of the military culture, is a lifestyle of fitness, a lifestyle of combat readiness. And that's what our canons say, and our creeds say, and our rules say, and our regulations say. That's why you have to take physical fitness tests. That's why you have to see a doctor every year. That's why we have a pretty robust healthcare system, is to maintain fighting readiness. So yes, we're supposed to want to keep people fit. But when it came to the shot, it was just, this was a political directive. And I'm convinced it was a loyalty test. I really, really am. I'm convinced it was a loyalty test to purge over 8,000 constitutionally minded patriots from the force, to see who can we trust to just execute orders without thinking, and who can we not trust, who will stand up. And they purged thousands that we know of, and there are tens of thousands more that, like me, who were not purged, but who walked away much earlier than planned. I mean, so the damage was incalculable, and it will, until there is accountability for that, that's a wound that will remain open for generations.
Well, supposedly Trump reinstated them with back pay, so I don't know how true that is, but
President Trump did write an executive order directing that. Secretary Hegseth wrote similar orders under that one directing it, and the Department of War has been kicking and screaming and slow walking that like you wouldn't believe. Now, just in recent days, they have begun to pick up the pace. The last estimate I saw was roughly about 100 had been reinstated. So maybe by this point in time, you could add a couple dozen to that, but it's a paltry number in comparison to those who were put out. And I know people who have been trying to get back in, and they have been blocked administratively at one gate after another, after another, after another. So, I mean, there are a lot of holdouts across the command who don't want to do the right thing, because then they would have to admit that they were in some way culpable of having done the wrong thing.
Right. Well, that was the whole point. So wait, who's slow walking it? It's not Trump's guys. There's other people that are against Trump that are slow walking it. Is that what you're saying?
It's a combination of both. I mean, some of the people who are over the people who are slow walking it are Trump appointees, and I've written about some of them. Undersecretary for War Anthony Tata has not been doing nearly aggressively enough of a job of directing these reinstatements. He's done something, and in recent days, he seems to have got much more motivated. So I'm very hopeful over the next few months, the speed will accelerate, but it shouldn't have taken a year to get that guy in gear. And the Air Force is the worst service of all the service branches. The Air Force does not want to comply with this. They are kicking and screaming and making it as difficult as they possibly can. And it's Trump appointees who run the Air Force. It's a Trump appointee who's the Secretary of the Air Force. It's a Trump appointee who's the Undersecretary of the Air Force. And so the orders are there, but personnel is policy. And the orders are only as good as the people willing to carry out the policy and to enforce the policy and to take scalps if people are not enforcing the policy.
I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if I wanted to join the military. I don't think I would want to join with all this stuff you're telling me. I don't know, man. It sounds like a nightmare in the military right now.
It's better than it was. All right. It's better than it was. I've got a lot of friends in who tell me, Chase, if you were in, you would see how much better it is. But they also still share that they're afraid to speak up because, even though the administration has changed, their commanders have not, and their commanders are loyalists. And so, my personal perspective on it, my personal philosophy is until there is widespread accountability for the wrongs that were done over the last few years, I just don't trust it. Now, my son is a member of the National Guard, and we had that talk, and I told him, hey, I support the National Guard because at least there's a level of local control there. And I think there's a lot of good you can do in your states. But I very much discourage today's young people from joining the active and even reserve components. And I've even been pretty vocal with some folks I know who are trying to get reinstated. And I've said, why would you want to reinstate to a service that has demonstrated before and is still demonstrating it hates you? I have no desire to walk into that.
Okay, let's say 2028 Trump obviously is out and a Democrat comes in and they reverse everything Trump does. The border opens a big gate, opens up the border. Is the military going to do anything? Or are we just going to go another 4 years of this hell?
Yeah, my concern right now is because the current administration has not purged people like Obama purged people from the top ranks. And that's a concern that I have, a great one, that if the White House switches hands, that the military will be ready to, on a dime, flip that switch and go back to the old ways and just be a continual jobs program and funding mechanism for defense contractors across the street from the Pentagon up in Crystal City. I do have that concern, which is why I tell people, like, conservatives have got to stop sitting on their hands and thinking, oh, we got Trump elected, we got our guy elected, now the battle's won, we can sit at home and not do anything. No, get off your ass, man. Like, the war is on. You have to get engaged in this. You have to vote. You have to get involved locally. You have to get involved at state level. You have to get involved at federal level. Like, this is a fight for our national survival. I mean, I know it seems like every election we say this is the most important one of our lifetimes. Well, it's because these stakes keep going up. Everyone does seem to be the most important one of our lifetimes. And
so,
I mean, this
have the military just step in and stop this madness. I know it's going to create chaos, but they know it's going to be bad. And everyone in the media is like, it's going to be bad. You're right. The election, this is the one, or the world's over. It's like, I thought the military was that role. Apparently they're not. All right. So what's your role now? Obviously are you in, or are you still in?
No. Thank God. I've been an American. I've been a full American citizen for 2 years now. It feels great. Now,
Okay.
the reason I got out in 2023, curtailed my career, was I feel like the fight for the nation is right here in this space, and conversations and discourse and rhetoric, and social doctrine. It's not on some foreign battlefield. The fight for America is certainly not in Eastern Ukraine. And so I wanted to be able to fight here where it matters for the soul of the nation. And so I'm an independent communication practitioner and strategist. And so I write on these topics. I'm a civil military scholar. I do my own podcast called Finding Your Spine, where I bring in people who have stood through the fire knowing it would cost them something, and they did it anyways. We've got a lot of veterans who've got great stories to tell about standing firm through the COVID mandates, standing firm through all the social doctrine, all the crap that was pushed down the force, standing firm up against it and paying the cost for it, but doing it willingly. And we use that to try to encourage people to stand up and to be counted, to get people a principle to act like it. And then I advocate for policy. I do a lot of work specific to the military, to call the military back towards its constitutional purpose. I do a lot of scholarship and writing and speaking on that. And so that's where I'm fighting now. I told my wife, told my family that I feel now like I'm actually getting to fight for the nation. Unfortunately, I had to take a uniform off to do it, but I believe that's a lifetime calling, and I'll be at it to my dying day.
Do you feel like you're a target now for speaking out?
I think anyone who speaks out is a target to some level. I mean, I get nasty mail. I've got death threats. There are certain precautions that we take that I didn't have to take in the past. I think anyone who speaks truth is a target. I mean, I don't live in fear. I don't live looking over my shoulder every second. I mean, our founding fathers pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to get this thing called America off the ground against the most powerful empire in the world at the time. The least I can do is say we should still stand and keep that flame burning.
What do you think is the most thing that needs to change in America today to save America?
It really does come down to Christ or chaos. I mean, I pray every single morning. I spend some time in prayer and in scripture and another reading. And I ask that God would grant repentance on national scale. I mean, there's a lot we can do to fix things in the realm of policy. There's a lot that we can do to fix things militarily. But at the end of the day, all of these things that we're battling are indicators of the bigger problem, which is a problem of rebellion, a problem of spiritual brokenness, a problem of a nation that has lost its way before the Creator, and we're facing the judgment for that. And we still, at our worst, have it way better than we deserve. And so I pray for widespread national repentance. I mean, that Christians have got to act like Christians, and that includes asserting ourselves into the policy process. People who say, "Oh, well, I shouldn't take my beliefs beyond the church door," that's a foolish, what I call surrender theology way to be. I mean, we are called to be salt and light, and salt is preservative, and light exposes bad things and exposes bad actors. And so we should absolutely, as Christians, be actively participating in the policy processes, not because we're trying to take over, but because we love our fellow man as we're called to. And we know that humans thrive when policy is good.
Well said. Let me ask you, I want to back up. Who's our number one, what number one country is our real enemy? We were always bred to say Russia's bad. Every video game says Russia's bad. Movies say Russia's bad. Is it really Russia? Are they really bad?
I think it's China. I think China is our number one adversary today. I mean, Russia is a competitor. I mean, when you look at the way the world is structured right now, there are three superpowers: the United States, Russia, and China. Russia has demonstrated it's not effective at conducting combined arms warfare. And so if it wanted to go toe to toe with us, it would physically be impossible for them to do so. China does not have the expeditionary capability of the United States military, so I'm by no means worried about a grand Chinese invasion. But China is continuing to spread its influence across the world through the Silk Road Initiative. It's buying up real estate, it's buying up influence, and it's a master at stealing intellectual property, government secrets, and defrauding people. So I see China as our biggest adversary right now to the entire world. I mean, China wants to be the world's top superpower. They're not shy about it either.
I would be embarrassed to be Chinese. Well, not Chinese, but like over there, you have to steal someone's idea and then you have to remake it because you didn't know how to make it in the beginning. To me, that's kind of like a dumb nation almost. All right. Also, is there anything? Okay, your podcast. You have a podcast. We talked about that, and it's called. What'd you say? Down some.
It's called
What'd you say?
Finding Your Spine. It's
What is it about?
It's well, it's not about chiropractic. I'll tell you that. Funny enough, if you Google just Finding Your Spine, I come up with a bunch of chiropractors. But it's the Finding Your Spine podcast, and I'm really blessed to do that in partnership with the Herzog Foundation, which is an amazing group that helps to really amplify Christian K through 12 education nationally. But I'm part of their podcast family, and my show, Finding Your Spine, is all about moral courage, and we call morally principled men and women to begin acting like it, to stand up in the public square, to be counted, to be active about it. And so it's a newer podcast. We're closing in on the end of our very first year right now. We've had some amazing people on. We've had a lot of veterans. We've had a lot of policymakers. We've had whistleblowers. My guest this week, Clarissa Rippey, blew the whistle on the General Services Administration spending like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of taxpayer money to conduct human trafficking of children across the United States. We've even had Dr. Ben Carson on. And so we call people to courage by sharing stories of people who have been there, who have done that. And so it's a pleasure to do that. That podcast is available anywhere people listen, as well as YouTube.
That's right. It's on Is it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Buzzsprout? Is that another podcast platform? And Amazon Music and Deezer. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Any last words before we go?
Well, it's just a great joy to spend this time with you. And I would just encourage people. The times seem dark, and we've talked about a lot of stuff that may make people feel a little bit alarmed or a little bit discouraged. This isn't a time to be discouraged. This is a time to do something about it. I love biblical references, and so I'll kind of close with this. We spend a lot of years kind of acting like we're stuck in Lamentations. Woe is us. The world is over. What are we going to do about it? The time for mourning is over. The time to do something is now. Close Lamentations, open Nehemiah. Let's take some inspiration from a man God called to rebuild the walls, and let's get to rebuilding right here.
All right. Awesome. Well said. Thanks for coming on. It was very interesting conversation that we had. And you know what? I hopefully you come back. I
would love to. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Thanks for having us. Or thank you for coming on. All right, guys, that wraps up today. Other than that, guys, we will see you next week. And other than that, we will